welcome to the Monday meeting today. It's July 30th, 2018. My name is Mark. I'm kind of somewhat hosting this today with raidZer0, the man himself. He'll be going over some workflow tips, some organization tips, and just a general Q&A of how he goes through taking on new projects and seeing them kind of through completion with file organization and all that. So one note that we're going to do a bit different this week is if you do have a question, just type in bold or in all caps in the chat question, and then we'll enable you to ask the question via audio or video. Whichever you would want. But that should allow us to have a little bit more interactivity between the whole group that is joined up here. It's kind of a new way of trying to ask questions, but we'll give it a shot this week and see how it goes. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to raidZer0 to take it away.
Hey guys. So let me just start the screen share. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Cool.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool. So the reason that I kind of got asked to come on here, because I shared this a couple of weeks back. This is a kind of diagram me and a couple of other friends kind of put together, still kind of work in progress, but after being at a big studio and some of my friends as well, I've started going freelance, and some of them went freelance before I did. It's kind of a transition between going from those large scale projects that may run over months and months and months to coming down to the smaller level that you might get as a freelancer, where it's maybe 1 or 2 days or even half a day sort of jobs, but still taking some of those production techniques and workflows and time savers and those sort of ideas and applying them to your freelance life. So this kind of outlines, like going left to right, kind of each project can kind of sort of fit into this depending on what it is. This is more like, so print and animation and things like that, which is what I'm more used to. Especially from like the automotive side, which I do a lot of work in. So getting the brief, so we start out and we'll usually get like a deck or something like that, so like a PDF, and it will outline the job, what the client wants, what their client wants if we're not working direct with the actual company, and then we'll start moving into the next phases where we'll either get on a client call or we'll have a team meeting and kind of gather questions that we're going to get on this call and start putting our own ideas into the mix as well. And it's usually at this stage where in the concept look and development, if I just zoom in there, where we'll start looking and to get a reference of, we're almost trying to repeat back to the client what they're wanting, but in our own voice basically. And this is where we'll look at storyboards, and we'll also start getting production looking at casting as well. If we've already been awarded the job and there's talent involved, we'll start looking at casting. So we'll start ringing around, getting suitable people. Say if it's a medical job and we need someone who's over 50, we'll start ring around, see what they got, get some people sending in decks and things like that. Location recce as well. I've got so I do a lot of automotive jobs, and I usually get things like this. So this is a recce that we went on, I think it was last November. And I went to LA, and there was a production company that went out and they put this amazing like booklet together where they've gone out and they've shot all of these locations in LA, and the production company just did a fantastic job because it's all kind of, they put the address, like what day we're going to be there, what the weather's going to be like, what time we're at the location, and even they sent out a PDF every day as well with kind of a location pin, so you could just click on your phone and it would take you to your Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever you use, and it would give you the location, so you could just put it into your sat nav. And it's these kind of things that he's the production company there. They've obviously done this a million times and know. Someone said along the line like, "Oh, it'd be really good if we just had a link to click on the map and take us to the location." So they just integrated it into, and it's a culmination of all of this knowledge that's led to these like great. And the client absolutely love these, and they give you like a whole pencil case full of stuff, like a notepad that all goes into a folder, and all of these things are just like, it makes you look good to the client, and it also makes your life easier as well, because it's something you just don't have to think about. It's all in one place. You just don't have to think about those sort of things, and those sort of time-saving little bits of information. Like when you get more and more of these jobs in, they're going to save you so much time over time. So going into the next part of it, see all these little red dots. These are the kind of client approval, because what you find is clients don't always know exactly what they're getting, and they don't know all the milestones that they'll have in a job, and they don't realize how much work it is sometimes to go back to a point in time. So we have these milestones where what we'll do is we'll say, like the concept and development stage, we'll have say a couple of models that we're going to use, a few different kind of styles, and a few different things on a mood board that we just kind of say, right, this is what we want you to sign off on. We want you to sign off on the shape of the model, the colors that it's going to be, et cetera, and this is what we want you to concentrate on. Maybe it's the camera angle, maybe it's the backplate that the CG object is going into. Like, you just need to outline exactly what the client needs to sign off at that point, and just make them know that we need sign off at this point to be able to move on to the next stage. Because if we don't get sign off at this stage, the further we go on through the project, the harder it will be to go back, and it will incur time and cost, and nobody likes to hear that, especially from the client end.
What's a common time frame you have for that stage of the project?
So the concept and development, it depends on the size of the project. So for instance, like this is kind of in terms of like a large scale project. So one of the automotive jobs that we would do, it'd be over a 4-month period. So the brief and the concept stage were round about 2 or 3 weeks, where we'd be talking to the people who are doing the scouting for the job. We'd also be gathering references as well of other photographers, other car brands that they really like their work at the moment, and things like that. And we're putting them all in documents, and we're talking with the client constantly about ideas and the look, because at the moment there's all that exists is CAD data and an idea, basically. So this is where we'll be gathering all that information from the client, like what you want it to look like, what kind of look and feel are we going for? Are we going for like a really saturated kind of American sort of style, or are we going for a more kind of muted German sort of Mercedes or BMW sort of style? Like that's the kind of things that we're gathering at this stage. And it's usually around 2 or 3 weeks at the start of the project where all of that sort of stuff is all crammed in, because we can't really start the job anyway, because we're prepping the CAD data, and we also don't have the locations of where we're going to be shooting. So all of that's kind of moved into the next stage. And then once we've kind of got the recce done, people have gone out, they've kind of scouted the locations, the client signed off the locations, that's when the shoot starts to get planned. So we'll plan the shoot over a week maybe, and that's where we'll hire an external production company as well to kind of look after that whole, just for the shoot. So that's getting catering, that's making sure we've got lighting, camera equipment, like screens for the client to view, like all of those sort of things. And what we'd then do is then we'd all go on the shoot, and then it's a case of just documenting all of that stuff. And we'll be doing things like we'll have, say, like a retoucher on set and a CG guy on set. So we can do things like the photographer can take shots, and then we'll have like a really basic view of the really basic CAD data of the car. So it's a decimated mesh. It doesn't really, it looks really janky and horrible, and but you can see a sense of a car. So we can put them in the scene, and they can kind of see it almost real time, like on the screen, on a laptop, on location, which really helps the client who aren't necessarily creative themselves. They can't imagine the final shot, because that's our job basically, to imagine that final shot.
Now, it seems like Liam actually has a question that might go right in line with kind of what you're talking about currently.
Yeah, so I guess how much CG work goes into your concept and development phase? Because you have texturing and shading and modeling and everything so much later down the line. So do you ever do like a beauty shot just so the client has that, or are you just providing mood boards and saying this is as close as we can get at this point?
No, before the shoot, it's completely conceptual. So it's all like, this is the kind of finished shots that we can kind of make it look like, and we'll have that in mind when we're going to go and shoot it. But in terms of the CG modeling, that's always after the actual shoot, or it's during the shoot, where we'll have a model like that's really crappy, but it's really low res. But it'll give the client like an idea of like where the car will be in the shot, you know, and it can help we'll have a dummy car on set as well. So maybe it's last year's model that we'll get, the road will be closed off, and we'll get them to drive in, and then the photographer or the videographer can line up on the shot, and then they move that car out, and then they'll kind of shoot like a backplate without any kind of stuff in the scene. We'll shoot HDRs as well for all the lighting, using we used a camera called, well, it's not a camera, it's like a kind of robotic arm called a LizardQ. You basically have say like a Canon Mark IV and like a really wide lens, like 10 to 12 mil lens on it, and it just does it all automatically. So you just plonk the tripod down, and you have a little iPod that controls it, and it will shoot the HDR in like under a minute, which is amazing, because we used to have to do it all manual, like go and do the 7 stops or whatever it is, 7 to 10 stops, and then move it around like 90 degrees, do it again. And like when you've got a road closed and you've got cops at an intersection and like 4 lanes of traffic, trying to keep that all locked down for 5 minutes, people are not going to be happy. So having those sort of time-saving things, like it costs $300 a day to rent it or something, but like the amount of time and money that you're saving in the long run, that just doesn't mean anything. So those sort of time-saving things are great. But the CG definitely doesn't happen until we actually have something to put the CG into, and that's where I went with a guy called Dave, and he just had a really fast laptop, so it had like a GTX 1080 in it or something like that, and he was just doing he was using 3ds Max and V-Ray, but he was just using the V-Ray. I can't remember what the frame buffer's called in V-Ray. I can't remember what it's called, but just to make it really fast. So he's loading in a JPEG that the Digitech has given him, and then he can just plonk the car in, get a kind of rough sun in there, and then the client can come over, and it's just like, oh, this is where we're thinking we're going to have the car, and they'll say, oh yeah, great, let's shoot that. Or they'll say, oh, can we move it back, can we have a bit higher? Like the client tends not to be able to make comments on things unless they can see it. So that's why we have that kind of team ready to go on set, for them to be able to see that, and that will happen throughout the day. Like it's really long days, like 12 to 16 hours days doing that sort of stuff for maybe 7 to 9 days on the trot. So yeah, that and then after that, all of the kind of data collection comes in. So we'll fly back to the UK. We'll get all of the hard drives from the photographer. The client gets a copy of it so they can go through it as well. And then we'll sort through it, make sure that each shot has its own kind of folder and all that sort of stuff. So I can show you this as well. So this was a shoot that I went on, and basically this is what was created after we went on the shoot. So you can kind of see all of the numbered, like it was for the Acura RDX, and you kind of got the shot number, like what year, what make and model it is. And we'll get this will be compiled from the client, from Acura, from the photography, and it's all put into one place so that everybody can see that's working on it. Like, oh, I need to be setting this shot up. We've done a scene setup where we've done it in blue, but it actually needs to be in black, right, and things like that. Because while we're on set, we only have limited kind of paint colors or whatever. So they're kind of saying, oh, we'd like to see it in blue while we're on set. But when they've got back to the studio, the clients actually said, well, we've actually got 7 other shots that are blue. Can we make this one black? Right, and things like that. And all of that kind of little tiny information from emails and stuff like that, it's all compiled into like this one major document that everybody can see, everybody has access to, and everybody can contribute to as well. So if you're on a private email chat, or you've been on the phone, you've been on a call with the client, and there's a little nugget of information, it's just like, oh, you know what, I really hate that reflection in that window, I think we should get rid of it. But he's never put it on anything else, you know, he's never like stated that while we were on set or anything like that. But that's a key piece of information that client is definitely going to remember, and it's your job to kind of make those notes while you're in a client call to make sure you deliver. And it's all those little things that add up, that it makes them think that you're on the ball, you know what you're talking about, and you're engaging with them, you know. So yeah, so these were all the things that we put together on set. So none of the back plates are retouched. The cars are all, they've got like maybe a HDR on them, some of them haven't. And these are kind of updated as we go along the project as well. I think this is quite an early one before it went on to, because we were using Office 365. So all of that went online basically. And obviously I can't show you now because I'm not with the company, but I can show you this one. So these are all the kind of shots that we went through. So there's lots of different lenses, times of day, different locations. And what we're doing is giving kind of options with those as well. So if I open another, so we've got some of these. So some of these are even like, you can see they're really low res by the shadows and stuff, but we've managed to put in a HDR that maybe it's like a test HDR, and then we've given them like a couple of options. So we could add a car here, we could add it sideways, and because it's CG, we're not limited to where the car like is parked basically. So we can make the car bigger. Like that's usually one of the comments that will come back from the client. It's like, oh, can we make the car bigger? So to make the car bigger, for instance, like in this shot, like the doorways are a giveaway, and maybe like the person up in the top right is maybe a giveaway. So we've got to make those mental notes that, oh, I need to make sure that if I'm going to scale the car up, that nothing else in the background is going to give that away. And it's those little things that come with experience. So yeah, we're just slapping them on. Not like, it's not a very pretty shot, but it just gives the client an idea. This is where we're telling them, like, we need to know, is this where you want the car in the shot? Do you want it in that lane? Do you want us to take lanes away? Do you want us to put the car back? Do you want to have 2 cars in the scene? Like, it's all these sort of things that we're going to be asking the questions, but we need specific like sign off from the client before they show their client. It's obviously they're going to want it a bit more sunnier. They're going to want the trees to look a bit greener in the background and stuff like that, but they're not going to be commenting on that because they know that that's going to be coming in a later round. So we're purely just saying, is this the right color? Is this the right size of the car? And is this the framing and lensing that you want at this stage?
So this is just like your initial approvals, like stuff will probably change, but this will at least give you a good direction to start with.
Yeah, so specific to Acura, like one of the first projects that we did with them, we actually did chalk renders, or doughboys, they were calling them, where it's just all one material and you can't really tell like what's going to be reflected onto the car and stuff like that. And their client were really not really happy about having those doughboys to kind of sign off on lighting and direction and things like that. So we kind of took the decision, it's like, it's going to take us like a little bit longer to kind of set up, where we have to rotate the HDR, maybe put in a CERN or something like that. But in the long run, it's going to make them happy, which is going to make them happy. So we took the decision to kind of render these cars, although they're rough, that they've got glass in the windows, they've got paint on the car, they've got like a really rough kind of tire texture on, and a shadow. And that just made the process so much more smoother, because they weren't hung up like, oh, but it doesn't look like a car. I can't really imagine the car with reflections on it. That kind of alleviated, because although we are showing them just for like lensing and angle sake, they're still kind of in that mindset of like, well, I'd like this shot to be a bit more sunnier if we can get it sunnier and things like that. So yeah, so these were all the kind of scene setups. This is just loading. I think it's like 5K in this JPEG. There we go. And this shot was eventually dropped. They didn't really like it. They thought it was too wide. So although we were there shooting it for an hour, like the client has the kind of final decision. That's why we shoot more than we actually need as well.
So Pedro has a question, and he said he's at work, so he can't ask it. But
okay,
he was just wondering if you have any, things in place where if the client comes up with changes after previously approving like that shot, like how do you handle that? Do you charge more? Do you,
Yeah, so this is where you jump on a call, and these projects are quite big. So it might be that there was a shot that you previously thought might be a bit more difficult, where you haven't spent as much time on it. And this is where you can work with the client and say, well, we've saved time on that shot because we were going to have talent in there, and we're not going to have talent in that shot now. So what we'll do is we'll kind of like take that budget that we have from that shot, and we'll kind of use it on this shot. And it's always kind of that relationship where if you can kind of make up the time, or just it's not going to take that much more time, and it's more difficult to tell the client, it's going to cost so much more money. Like nobody likes to hear that. So
right.
they always like to hear the kind of like problem solving, like we've looked into it and this, that, and the other. And obviously not all the time you can do that, but especially on these projects, you'll have so much time that you can save elsewhere. Say maybe you've I've spent the time kind of processing out the photography, and I've used another computer while I'm working on something else, and it's those sort of time saving things. It's like it's a little bit here and there, but it can save you a week in the whole 4 months project, and that week can then be used. It's almost like a buffer. It's trying to make yourself a buffer, and like looking forward to kind of see those sort of things in the project. But let's say you haven't got any buffer, you haven't got any, and that sort of thing, and like what you need to do is you need to have that kind of record of whether you sent emails or you've made notes on the call. Like I'd always suggest, even if when you have a call, is always follow up with an email, kind of outline what you've said on that call, because it's kind of like proof really, because you can say, get it in writing, exactly, yeah. And you can kind of say, well, at that stage, we really needed the sign off. And you can explain that in the email as well when you're sending the stuff. Like, it's really important that we get this bit signed off because the kind of stages that we're going to go through in the next few stages, that they're going to be more difficult to go back, and may occur costs and time in the long run. So you're kind of outlining it at that stage that this is the case. So when that time comes around, they're already on the back foot, because you've already outlined that, and
Right.
you've got less explaining to do, really. Like they're going to be going, listen, I know we've kind of said that we want to go down this direction, but actually the client's turned around and said we're going to do this direction. What can we do? We can just say, listen, we can go back to that stage, but obviously it's going to cost X amount. It's going to take this long, and it may take this long, and then you can give them the option. Then it's just like, well, what we can do is maybe drop another shot, or we can look at making another shot a bit more simpler. It's always giving them options, rather than just saying, oh, that's going to cost 5 days.
It's shifting
and
the budget around this timeline.
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate people are freelance and maybe not working on jobs that are this big, but it's like taking those ideas, definitely, that you can give them as many options as you possibly can, and make it seem like you're on the same side, because they have a client, and they're obviously the kind of feeling the same way. They'll have conversations that are not everybody can hear, and things like that. So yeah, it's just like seeming like you're on their side. Like, listen, we've had a look at all the options, and these are the ones that I can give you. And maybe we can save some money here, there, and everywhere. And that's really good for your relationship as well.
Right.
Like whether you're the person giving that news, or you're passing it on to someone to give that news, yeah. So
awesome.
That's what I do.
Good answer.
Okay. Cool. Right. Let's move on to the next part. Okay. So I keep grabbing the wrong piece. There we go. Okay. This is where we get into maybe the post-production side of things. So I can show you this schedule that we had done. So you see, like at the start of the project, so Sam, who is one of my producers on the automotive jobs, great guy, who always put schedules together as soon as he possibly could. So this is the kind of simple version for the client that we sent to the client, and it's already got those buffers kind of sewn into it without them realizing that it has buffers in it. So it may be that so everything that's orange is kind of a client send. So we may already have that done, say maybe the Tuesday before, and then what we'll do is kind of like try and keep a week maybe on top of this schedule, where if there's anything that goes awry, there's any problems with CG, or something breaks, or there's new CAD data that comes in, we've got that buffer, and we know we've got that buffer in the studio. But we'd not necessarily tell the client that we have that buffer. And it's always like, if something comes like that in, they'll be like, oh, I'm really sorry, like, can you fit this in? And we're like, well, we'll really try and get that fitted in. And then when you deliver, it's just like, oh wow, these guys are awesome, they're so on it, but you can see, like, at the start of the project is quite slow. So it's going to the client, they're talking to their client, we're kind of getting the feelers out, we're getting sending on a Friday, getting feedback on a Monday, and all of this is kind of intertwined between so CG are kind of always ahead, so they'll be prepping the CAD data while we're doing the production, the kind of storyboarding phase, and then when we go on the shoot, that's when they'll be doing all the shaders and like those sort of things, so like paint and glass, and getting all those shaders looking really nice. And then as we're moving on, they're doing like scene setups while we're doing prepping the photography and the footage, and it's always kind of like that staggered view. So like by the time we get into, this is where we're like full production now. So I think I had 5 retouch guys in the London office, and then I had 3 guys in the LA office. So we were working over a long period of time. So we did 9 till 6 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. London time, and then LA would pick up certain files from their time. So you're essentially getting like maybe 16 to 18 hour days, which helps us like production wise, because normally a working day is say like 8 hours or something like that. So we're using the time zones to our advantage as well, and we'll wake up in the morning and have download kind of links of all the stuff that they've been working on the day before, which is really cool. These all of these whips and client rounds of feedback, we had this system called Proof HQ. I don't know if you've used it. I think it's a little bit like Frame.io, where what they'll do is like each round. So we'll be sending. So I've actually got one of the shots in particular. So this is shot 7. So we budget for 4 rounds for each shot. So the first round is kind of what we tend to do is try and get it as far as we possibly can in the time frame, get it as close to final as we possibly can get it, but the client knows that there is either going to be some little problems, like maybe we haven't got updated CAD data yet, but these are the things that we're outlining in the emails as well. It's like, it's first round, be gentle. There is a few things that we're still looking at, and yeah, so I'll just show you the first whip. So what we've done is done a kind of retouch on the background. We've swapped out there's like an area back here at the vanishing point where they wanted to swap in a building because it was all in shadow, so they just wanted to swap in a building that was actually lit. So what we did on the day is just walk down the road a bit, and we shot the building that was in sunlight and then comped the two together. All of the blurs added in a program called Virtual Rig, which is for doing specialized like blurring for car shots, and you can get like blurs around the corner. You can also blur HDRs as well for the reflections. And this was one of the caveats in this shot where we said that we haven't done the blur on the HDR yet, so all the reflections on the car will actually be sharp. So that was one of the caveats that we did in our emails. So they didn't comment on that because they knew it was coming in the next round. Some of the comments that come back, it was just like sky's too blue, etc., and they refer back to like a look and feel document that they put together, and they didn't quite feel that it matched the look and feel. So in the next round, I think it's a bit more desaturated, and there's a bit more work done to the reflections in the car, etc. I might just actually open up all these in Photoshop so we can see the kind of differences between. Excuse me a sec. So this is another.
What's the size of the team that's given feedback on this? Are you working with like?
Yeah, so there'll be a creative director, and there'll be 2 product guys as well. So the creative director and his boss, the ECD, will be giving comments. The ECD probably doesn't come in until maybe like round 2 or 3. And they'll be giving creative comments, and then the product team will be giving like specific product comments. So they'll say the indicator isn't orange enough, or it has this sort of pattern, or this part of the grille is actually shiny plastic, and things like that. So we'll have like a reference shoot where it will kind of be going in close up to the car in sunlight, and also in kind of a studio environment. So we have both kind of scenarios. Let me just drag all these into one. Okay, so let me get them in order. Okay, they're in order. Cool. All right, so that was round 1, and then if I flick to round 2, you can kind of see what So not much has happened there. So just a little bit more work on the car. They've probably said like, we want to lighten up the left-hand side of the car. Some shader work has gone on a little bit. So maybe like new renders, and a little bit more blur has been added into the background as well. And then moving on to the next round. So we've gone a bit more desaturated. We've kind of exaggerated the back of the car. So the shape of the car at the back, we've kind of darkened behind it, just to bring that shape out a bit more. The shadow is a little less harsh and less black. And also the wheels have changed color because the product team came back and said the wheels are too shiny. They're actually like a paint color rather than a chromey sort of alloy. All right, so those are the sort of comments that are coming back, and it's all like minuscule, tiny product comments. So we're sending these at 6K. We're actually making them at around about 12,000 pixels by 12,000 pixels.
Wow.
So we're sending half res. So they're zooming in like to the 300% kind of, and they'll be picking up on, it should have parking sensors, like there's little tiny dots, because Acura kind of pride themselves on showing their products exactly how they are, whereas other car brands might do a disclaimer at the bottom saying the car may differ from the picture shown. Acura don't like to do that, so that's why we had to go through 4 rounds of comments. So all the product guys can get their eyes on it, and they can tell us what we're going to be working on, what exactly material each part of the car is, and make sure that it's absolutely correct, because they're putting their name on it.
And does the feedback like line up with that schedule that you had? Like,
yeah,
you
exactly.
give them a deadline,
so
you by that time, or?
Yeah, exactly. And if they don't hit that deadline, then they know that it will incur however many days that they are out, that it will incur those amount of days to get the comments back to them, because that's where and that is again where we may talk to them and say, listen, we really need this feedback, because it's going to kind of have a knock-on effect for all the other shots, and maybe we can we've got these other 2 shots that maybe we can send you just to kind of give you in the meantime, and then if you get those comments back, we'll just work on this shot while you're commenting on those shots. It's just finding that balance again. So going through the comments again, and then we kind of finish it. Like the final comments this is like a tiny little change on the headlight. If you go in really, there's a little tiny change on the reflection on the headlight. So that was the final round. That was why there was 5 rounds rather than 4. So going from the first round up until the last round, you can kind of see the quality difference there. That's
crazy. The detailed feedback, just like that highlight in the light is, that's
the kind of minuscule thing. And think like how many shots that's on as well. So I think that this whole campaign had 94 print shots.
Wow.
So
wow, that's awesome.
So there's people doing like 3 to 4 shots a week, and then five people in London and 3 people in LA. Like that's how much like work is constantly going on. And the things I did to kind of stay on top of that as well is, although we had the schedule and everyone has access to that schedule, what I would do is I would make people responsible for their shot. So if you got assigned a shot, I don't want to hear like come deadline day that I didn't get the CG has gone wrong or something like that, so I won't be able to get it out. It's just like, well, that's your job to go and tell the CG guy that the CG is wrong, and then you get on with it. Like, or you tell me when the CG is wrong, and then I'll go and sort it out. Those sort of things. And
so you're responsible for the shot all the way through, pretty much.
Exactly. Yeah. So when the comments come back, they're your comments. And like I found that people had a lot more kind of pride in their work when they're doing that, because automotive is not the most exciting thing to do in the world. But once you give them their shot, and it's like I've done that shot, and it's going on the website, and they can say that it's like a portfolio piece done, and like they've got a bit more ownership of that thing, and like I'm making them accountable for those shots as well. And like I try and do that with pretty much everyone that I work with, even if I like send stuff out or doing that, that's your shot. I'm expecting you like to kind of own that shot as if it's your own, you know?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And like you said, it gives the responsibility and the ownership of that. So.
Yeah. So I didn't want to just completely just go over this this whole thing. There's a few other things that I was kind of drilled into, like when I first started in like a kind of mid-size production, that file management is like a really important thing. And like if you're not on top of that, like that's the kind of thing that can trip you up, like, and trip everyone up, because you'll know those projects that you'll be doing the project, it goes kind of great, and then there'll be that last minute change, and then it kind of gets archived, and then a year later the same company is just like, oh, you know what, we really liked last year's campaign, but we want to spruce it up, we want to change something. And you kind of dive into the thing, people have left, you know, people like other people are in different positions, and then you open the files up and it's just like, where's that gone? What's happened here? You know, those sort of things. So it's really important that, like, I know when I was being trained, that was drilled into me, and I felt like, because I just I've been a freelancer for 3 years before I'd started at that full-time position, and I felt like it was just slowing me down. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, I literally have to name everything, and like I'm making sure that it's all non-destructive and I can go back and like all this. And I just felt like when I, like, maybe the first couple of months I was staying like an hour extra every night, because I was just like, I really don't want to let anyone down. And I also, like, I feel like I haven't worked enough because I've spent so much time doing this. But the thing is, like, after a month or so, maybe even like 2 or 3 weeks, that you just start getting used to it. You start like getting used to it. It becomes second nature, you know. When I'm saving a folder, I'll put the date in the folder. And when I'm naming layers or naming objects in my scene, it's like, I don't want to have like cloner, you know, null. Like, I don't want to have that. Like, I don't want to open a project and have that happen. So definitely on, like, even like small projects, I'll try and name things. And maybe like now I've got freelance, I've tried to like try and keep that up as well. And yeah, like I did a whole kind of training series. My work made me do some video tutorials, like when I announced that I was leaving, to do all those sort of things. And that was definitely like the #1 video. It's just like, right, this is how you set up your file, and this is how you name everything. This is how, like, and it's those little things. Like even on here, like I've got a little script that I can share for just naming the file that opens. So if I close this and then open it up again, I can show you what it does. So I'll just open this file. So normally it will just open up a file and just say background, and it'll be a locked little icon. But what this script does is that, like, every file that's opened, it will name the layer, the file name. So all of a sudden, it's like if you've got a multi-part comp and you know, you've got to drag in lots of photography and stuff, you know where that photography has come from. You know the file name. If you need to, like, you're doing a low res comp or something, and then you've got to make it high res, you know where that's come from. So I can definitely share that. And then I've got actions that I've made where, like, I save out sRGB JPEGs to the client, so we're 3K. So just hit play on that, and it'll just resize. And now I can just save it, and it's changed the color profile to sRGB. So the reason I do change it to sRGB is because email clients actually assign sRGB. So if you imagine Adobe 1998 is a gamut that's this big, what will happen is an email client will just literally just take a stamp of that in the color space, which actually makes the image way more desaturated. So that'll happen through like Apple Mail or Outlook or anything like that. So by assigning sRGB instead of converting it, so if I if I convert to sRGB instead of assigning it, it will maintain how it looks rather than just trying to clip it completely in that space. So I can
Pro tip right there. Pro tip.
So if I just go back in my history to like where I opened it, right, I can actually show you here. So if I go to edit, convert to profile, and then I've got sRGB selected here in my space. So if we hit sRGB, you'll notice that nothing changes, but down here it's actually changed from Adobe 1998 in the bottom left hand corner to sRGB. Now if I undo that, go back to the open. Oh, this is actually sRGB already, but let me just change it to Adobe 1998. Okay, so that's converted to Adobe 1998. Now, if I assign it how an email client would do it, so if I assign a profile and then click sRGB,
oh wow,
can you see like it's like desaturating? And that's basically because it's just clipping all the colors just to fit it in that space. Like right, it's taking it from here to here, just to kind of to fit it into that place. So anything that I send to the client that's going to be a still or it's definitely to do with the color or anything like that, I'll always convert to sRGB before I send it.
So when you would send these shots for approval and whatnot, you just send directly in an email, or you don't put it in a PDF for anything?
No. So what we'll do is, like, you never know what they're gonna view it in. You don't know if they're gonna open it in Photoshop, whether they're gonna, and we're just sending individual JPEGs because they need to upload them to their Proof HQ thing. So if it's embedded in a PDF, they'd have to go through, they'd have to save out each JPEG, and that was just an easier workflow thing for them, that they just wanted single JPEGs. But again, we didn't know what they were going to be viewing them in, so we were just making sure that we're sending sRGB because even if they view it in a web browser, it will look exactly how it should, or close to how it should in Photoshop or being printed. So yeah, so that was one of the little tips as well. And I have also like a folder structure as well that I've kind of adopted from working in a big studio, because like you obviously have to, when projects are finished and stuff, you archive them. And the way they kind of did it where I worked is you'd have 2 digits at the start, which is the year, so like 18, and it'd be underscore, and then there'd be a 4-digit job number, and then it would be underscore, and then the agency that we're working for, underscore, and then the job name. So that, like, all of the files that you see in the jobs folder all had that same thing, and they're all kind of split up by a year as well. So you'd have, say, like the 2017 would have 2017 pitches, 2017 internal work, and then a list of all jobs that had 17 at the start of it, and then it moves on to 18, and all of that's searchable. All of that's in a document as well, where all the job numbers are all kind of saved. So you can either search by the job name, the job number, the year, just for archival purposes. So I've kind of adopted that, where I've just got a master file structure where I've just got the year and then the month and the date. You probably do it the other way around. I know you have the date and the month the other way around, but I'll have things like, so I can actually show you one of the jobs I'm currently doing now. So from client, what I'll do is I'll just save the brief. So I'll just open up a text document from the emails, just so it's all in one place and I don't have to search through all of my emails. I'll take the brief, I'll put it in a text document, and I'll take all the reference that he sent and just put it all in a dated folder that I know, it's come from this date. And then I've got production, which is like all of the the Photoshop files for instance on this one. I'll be doing some Cinema 4D later on in the job, and then I've got assets, renders, just so it's all kind of organized. And I know, like, because I've made this file structure, I can obviously navigate it very, very quickly. You'll probably have your own folder structure, but I definitely, like, as you're working, just like put things in folders with dates on, and like, because that it's going to make you look so good when you say that, like, you're on a client call and it's like, oh, actually you sent that on the 25th of July, and they'll be able to look through their own stuff because they're not going to be that organized, and they'll go, oh yeah, we did send you that. Yeah, we were wrong, you know, and you have that kind of backlog. To clients, same thing. I'll just date the things, and then I do W1 for work one, and every round that I send, so that's me finished with work one now. So as I get new comments, I'll like version up basically. So I know that I'm not working on top of anything that I've sent previously to the client. So yeah, these are just like low res comps that I did for a new kit launch for like a football team called Gloucester. And this is like, none of the retouching on the skin or the clothes has been done yet, but it's just kind of getting that look and feel. Similar sort of thing. You see the guy, you can see a bit of a belly, or the with the yellow shirt. And this is the one that's going to be done in cinema. So they want this kind of. So I've done a quick mock-up in Photoshop, like with one of their references, but I'm not going to use one of their references because it was just straight off Google. So I'm actually going to remake it and make it a bit more custom. And it can later on be animated, because that's one of the things that I upsold to the client, that, oh, if we have neon lights and I'm doing it in 3D, I can have all of those lights flickering on and off, and you can use it for social media or whatever, you know. And so that's an extra bit of work that I got just from doing that. So but yeah, just keeping those as organized as you possibly can, naming everything, trying to make templates if you can. So if you find yourself doing something more than once in a program, then you're more likely to do it again. So if you can either make an action or a template or some kind of time-saving, even a shader. So like, you might use gold all the time, just making like a really killer gold shader that you just have in your, you know, your asset library or something like that, that you can just, even if you change it every time, it's just like, I've already got gold. It's just like drag, drop gold, you know, like things like that. It's just, I know, like, I use gold a lot in, like, people want gold for some reason. They just have like a killer gold material, black plastic, you know, something like that, you know, just anything like that. And like in Photoshop, especially, because obviously that's the kind of thing I've used the most. I've got hundreds of actions that I've kind of gathered over the time, and I can share these as well if people want to use them. You might not know what they are, but like things like composition. So I've made an action that just gives you all of the.
Wow, that's awesome.
Rule of thirds, golden ratio, like, and then just kind of split up into all the different corners. So I've spent the time on downtime where I just like, oh, you know what, I really love that, because it kind of sizes to any document as well, and it's just all in a folder just at the top. So these are what I call tools, and then I've got things like visualization as well, which helped me on cleanup. It's really good for like seeing noise or something like that. So if I just open up this one, for instance, and then I've got an action called visualizations, and it basically makes a bunch of curves. This one's called solar. So it looks crazy on here, but you can see like all of the like stuff in gradients, and say like if you stitch two things together, you'll see the actual marks where they go in. So if I need to clone something that's like a blue sky, for instance, like you might not be able to see it when it's like this, but like when I've got my solar curve on, I know that like I might have like specs on the lens or something like that I'm not necessarily seeing. But imagine printing that the size of a billboard, and then there's like a bloody great big splodge or something that you've missed because it's only like 4 or 5 pixels wide, you know. And then just basically I've just got all specific ones for looking in the whites, looking in the blacks. So this is really good for the contact shadow. So where the two surfaces meet, getting those colors exactly the same and making sure that the levels in those 2 points are exact. It's actually really hard to do when you're just like looking at it like this. But using the blacks, I can really get in there and just make sure that all of those levels are exactly the same. And then we've got X-ray, lighter, and then darker. So those are kind of tools that I use all the time. And again, anything that I've used more than once, I'll make an action for. So I can just use it later on. And I'm adding to this all the time. And this is the kind of thing I have. So if you're freelance, I really suggest you get like a cloud-based surface. So like obviously I use a lot of Adobe products as well. So if you get like the Adobe CC, I think you get 100 gigabytes of space. So I'll take all these with me. So I'll have actions, I'll have brushes, I'll have color profiles, like all of these sort of things, so that I know when I go into a studio, I'm going to be sitting down, I'm going to be setting up, and I'm going to be ready to work as quick as possible, you know. And any of those like cloud-based services like Google Drive, Dropbox, whatever, just having a folder where it's like, I know that I'm going to need like some of these tools to do my job, like just having a folder ready to go when you go into a studio. They're ready and waiting, that you can set up, and you're getting to work as quick as you possibly can. Like I know in my experience, I don't like that freelancer sitting down and then going, how do I connect to the server? Oh, you've only been here for 2.5 hours. How come you're asking me now? You know?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the chat's been lighting up with reactions to those Photoshop actions. So I'm sure
cool.
you would be stoked if you shared some of those. And even if you want to do your project structure too, I think that'd be a great resource. But with that being said, I don't know if there's anything else you want to cover, but we could open up the floor to anyone who wants to ask questions. I know it looks like Matt had a question about color shifting issues. I don't know, Matt, if you want to ask that.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I worked at my last place, you know, we dealt with issues all the time with color, you know, and when you were talking about switching over to a different profile, like we would send off a proof or something and be like, well, this color doesn't exactly match. Do you deal with that all the time?
Yeah. So like with print, especially, like like the CMYK and RGB, they don't really match. So when you do all your retouching in RGB, and then you'll do a conversion, but what you'll be doing all of the time is, like, just out of experience, you'll be trying to keep those colors within gamut. So for instance, like really electric blues, really vivid reds, like they don't really print well. So like if you've got a lot of detail in your RGB, so like red car paint, for instance, you've got lights and shadows and stuff like that. As soon as you do that conversion to CMYK, all of that just kind of bleeds together and just makes one big red blob, basically. So what you've got to do is kind of keep your client's expectations of what that red is going to look like to the minimum, basically. So you're always kind of checking. So the shortcut for Photoshop is Control Y to flip between RGB and CMYK. And it's just keeping those kind of changes to a minimum before you send it. So you don't want to be working in RGB the whole time knowing something's going to be printed. Send it them, they print it out in CMYK, and then go, what is going on with this? You know, it's just like they're going to go crazy. So you need to keep their, keep their expectations of how much it's going to change to the minimum, basically. And that's experience where I know that electric blues, like vivid reds, like things like that, like if they've got a shot that has all of that stuff, you need to like make sure that they know, well, if it's going to be this electric blue, like unfortunately you're not going to be able to get the exact colors. And if we are going to be getting those exact colors, then they're going to need to be spot colors. So you'll have CMYK, so the 4 printing colors, but then you'll have an extra one that's your Pantone or whatever that is printed on top. if you want them colors to be exact, or we can match it as close as we possibly can in the CMYK kind of realm as well. Yeah. So that's what I do for that.
If anyone else has a question, feel free to chime in now. Looks like Pedro has another one, but again, he's at work, so he's muted. But he says, how do you do your color correction to match two images from the same project?
So what I would normally do, so if I open Photoshop again and say like these were two completely different, let's open a recent one. What you can do is, let me just make this one just crazy different color, for instance. What you can do is just like add a mask onto one of the layers, and then you can just draw like squares over your, like in different places. So what I'm doing is just drawing a marquee and then making sure my black is in the background position, and then just hitting backspace. And then I'm just going through, and I'm just in key areas, just kind of doing this, just so I can match. And then what you do then is just like go into your curves or levels or whatever you like to use, and then it's just you're just kind of color correcting your shots to kind of match as best you can. And let's say that one side of the image is darker than the other, like you just be using more adjustment layers, making that side brighter. Actually, I had a selection on. And then you just be using gradients to kind of grad in different places, just to kind of match those different colors. And it's usually what I'll do is I'll try and match tone first. So you can even go into your levels, and so like you can match tones in like each different channel first, and then see how far you've got. So you can still use all your adjustment layers, like, but just in certain channels. Or you can, like I like to use just the RGB, but then I'll do light and shade first. So all the tones, like try and get them as close as I possibly can. And then I'll work on color, and then I'll be adjusting. And usually you can get it down to like 3 or 4 adjustment layers. So I use curves mostly, and I'll separate out the actual light and dark and color with 2 different curves. So I'll be doing all of my like RGB adjustments in one curve, and then I'll make a new curve and do all my color adjustments. And if that's still affecting, because you can still like add, like say for instance like red in the shadows or something like that, and it's still affecting how bright the image is, you can actually change the blend mode to color, and it will just make sure that it's only changing the color of it rather than the luminosity. And same for the RGB, like brighter and darker. If you change that to luminosity, that'll only affect the light and dark. So you can add color into it, and it will only change the light and dark. It won't actually change the color of it.
It's awesome. We're gonna have to have you back on just to do like Photoshop tips. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I might have something in the pipeline for that, but I can't tell you.
Secrets. Awesome. Well, if anyone else has a question, feel free to throw it in the chat right now. But I think we're starting to wrap up here. And just big thanks to raidZer0 for taking time out today to kind of go over this. There's a lot of cool tips and stuff that I picked up on. So just very, very cool. And
I'll send some stuff on, like a couple of the Photoshop actions and maybe that script as well, and kind of a mini tutorial how to install them as well. So
yeah, that'd be great. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for showing up. Thanks to raidZer0 and Phil for doing an amazing presentation. And yeah, like I said, we'll have to have you back on to do some more stuff. So
cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all for showing up. Have a great Monday. Have a great week. And next week we have Liam doing a presentation on the different renderers, I believe. And we're looking forward to that. I don't know, Liam, you are in the chat here. You're on the meeting. I don't know if you want to give a little teaser for what's coming up next week.
Sure. So basically, I'm going to go over just like the standard PBR workflow and those textures and how they plug into each renderer. And so it kind of just makes an equal playing ground for wherever you're at. So that way, you know, if you go into a studio and they have Arnold and you're coming from Octane, you know, all right, this is how it works in Octane. I can probably jump into Arnold this way. And if you're working in Arnold and you want to jump into Octane or Redshift or whatever, you can get the general sense of what a PBR workflow is, which is physically based rendering. And it's generally all the same through every render engine. And that's how you can kind of just hop between all the three main ones.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, we're looking forward to that. And I'm actually going to be out next week, but Liam is going to kind of take over as host and presenter. And I'm sure we will record that one as well. So thanks again, everyone, for showing up, and we will see you next week.
Brograph.com, an online resource for learning Cinema 4D, After Effects, and other motion graphics tools specifically catered to help you prevail as a motion graphic designer.
What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph motion graphics tutorial.
With tutorials, plugins, and now a podcast with tens of thousands of listeners worldwide.
Yeah, it's a great community to be part of.
We give you professional time-saving tips, industry news, interviews, shortcuts, and lessons that help keep you current in the world of motion design.
Join the HDR studio, take the render settings, pick the HDR, put in a reflection, and gorgeous.
I love projects that scare me. When our art director comes to us and asks for something that I had never done before, man, it gets me pumped.
Our weekly long-form podcast will give you the latest news, help you in your file management, hardware configuration, and client relations. Learn about the latest render engines, modeling techniques, and workflow integration while staying entertained.
Real nice banana.
Ah, that's so funny. All right. I'm going to live forever.
Our Brograph Talks are a chance to see the way industry leaders from around the globe are changing the face of motion design.
Sometimes you got to make stuff that you're not going to put on your reel, and I'm not here to judge.
The podcasts and talks include people like Beeple, Barton Damer, Nick Campbell, Andrew Kramer, David Ariev, Chad Ashley, Paul Babb, EJ Hassenfrost, Mitch Myers, Chris Schmidt, Jules Urbach, Cornelius Dammert, David Brodeur, Andy Needham, Caitlin Kaju, Zubair Parker, Noseman, Ryan Bean, Casey Hupke, Nick Lyons, Sage, Joey Korenman, Jeremy Cox, Rick Barrett, John Dickinson, Matthias Omatola, Patrick Goski, Brandon Clements, Steve Teeple, Tom Glimpse, Patrick Longstrom, Julia Simone, Devin Coe, Al Heck, and even Deadmau5.
You get that render done. Yeah, you better frame what?
Our Brograph breakdowns go behind the projects and give you an insight on what it's like to manage and maintain your own personal business or work for a large company. Join us for live sessions, check out our useful plugins, watch time-lapse projects, interact with us, and send us email questions and topic ideas. Or just hit the Rando Render button and do an imaginative daily that'll keep you on your toes.
Take all your dreams and let's do it!
Subscribe today and get automatic updates on the latest tutorials, tricks, tips, and inspiration brought to you by industry professionals Dave Koss and Matt Milstead.
We don't care how you get here, folks. Just get here.
Subscribe now to Brograph Tutorials. It's pretty good, I guess.